advice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice.
Hello and welcome to Dungeon Master of None.
Hi, Matt. Glad to be here.
Rob, we have a special guest with us today. Hi, Linda. Welcome to the show.
Yes.
Me?
Sorry.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Hi.
Hi, Linda.
Linda.
Welcome.
Hi.
Linda, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, naturally, of course.
Oh wait,
I
wait.
always...
Sorry, Linda. Sorry, everyone. I'm getting a call right now. Hold on 1 second. Hello.
Oh, this is the bit.
It's a 212 numbers. Anyone know where that's from? New York.
This is
Hello?
the joke, guys.
New York City. Columbia University, you say? Board of Advisors? Pulitzer? Oh, Pulitzer. Oh. Well, no, we're not part of that. But yeah, we can do it.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
give me a second. Okay, sure. I'm downloading it right now. Okay, it's printing. Here we go. Okay, this is sorry. Thank you. Bye. This is highly unusual, Linda, but on behalf of the advisory board and board of regents of Columbia University, I would like to present to you this Pulitzer Prize. It's not for investigating journalism. It says 2023 Pulitzer Prize for dragon slaying, Linda Codega. Congratulations on behalf of the whole Dungeon Master of None family and Columbia University.
Wow, look at that.
We'll
I
send that
know
over.
this is an audio format, but the guy Matt is holding up like a little medal that it's clearly homemade, but beautiful nonetheless.
Homemade by the
spilled
Pulitzer Committee, Linda.
Yeah,
And
it looks like they spilled a little too much Agrax Earthshade on it in trying to make it look old.
But it is an honor.
yeah,
to accept.
listeners will make sure that you've got a visual to go along with this. But yes, very special award in the new Pulitzer category of dragon slaying.
Dragon
So I guess we
slaying.
should start off by saying, Linda, congratulations and thank you for all of your amazing reporting over the last couple weeks.
Thank you. Yes. Hi, my name is Linda Codega. I am a reporter at Ionine Gizmodo. I use they, them pronouns, and I scooped/broke the OGL, the D&D OGL story that you might have been hearing about.
Possibly. This is, you've done a great job, and many people have said so, but I think it's truly, just truly wild that you happened to be a reporter at the time of possibly not just the most exciting thing to happen in the TTRPG space, but also maybe the only exciting thing to ever happen in the TTRPG space. Like, this is probably the most interest there has ever been in tabletop role-playing games in the last maybe like 50 years. Like, I saw Cory Doctorow talk about it, and like a bunch of like
The Motley Fool?
yeah,
like
a bunch of
business-
the Motley Fool. That's right.
business types?
There were stocks talking about it. I mean, it's really bizarre. Truthfully, I hate it. I wish people would not pay attention to our weird little hobby, but
I know.
it has been wild times.
Yeah, I think no one is more surprised than I am about just sort of the sheer amount of chaos that has ensued post January 5th report. It's been incredible. This is my part in it can be debated and probably will be by historians and future nerds. But I think that this will probably be recognized as one of the most monumental months in tabletop role-playing game history, at least this decade, if not like the past 2 or 3 decades.
I mean, I think that's entirely uncontroversial to say. Like, there's an optimistic and a cynical reading of this, but regardless, it's pretty obvious that the trajectory of tabletop role-playing games has been completely altered, right? By the, from what Wizards said they were going to do prior to your reporting to what they have now said that they are going to do. And again, there's a couple of different ways to look at this, but either way, the difference, the material difference in like what would have happened if there had not been any reporting and nobody had made a fuss is dramatic.
I think it's hard to imagine what would have happened if they had released the 1.1 as they had originally planned to. I think that a lot of the reporting would be very reactionary and very much like, look at what the nerds are mad at now. much more so than the kind of cogent, focused anger that a lot of people were able to express in actually productive ways, which is incredible.
It is.
So last time we had you on, Linda, you were reporting on Gripnir, this like weird
the glimmering, Matt.
Grifnir, the glimmering, this like weird kind of maybe a little fly by night crypto company that barely had an email address, and now you're reporting on Hasbro, a NASDAQ traded company. Do you want to talk a little bit about like reporting on this story? The parts that you can.
When you say like reporting on the OGL story, do you want me to tell you like how I got the story? Do you want me to tell you like how I've been following it? Like,
sure. Yeah. Like, how did you get the story?
I got an email at 11:45, January 4th, 11:45 a.m. And someone was like, I have the OGL 1.1. Do you want to see it? And I was like, absolutely, I do.
Holy shit.
Yes, I want to see it. I want to see it right now. I was cooler than that, but not by much. And then I got the OGL 1.1 and I read over it and I was like, holy shit, this is bad. This is fucked up, actually. So I went to my editor and I was like, this is fucked up. And he's like, well, I need you to finish that breaking news story on the rack and then you can get back to this. And I'm like, fine. So by an hour later, I had like read it again and I talked to my editor, and by this time I had looped my editor-in-chief in as well. And I'm really lucky that like my editor is like the editor of IO9, or technically deputy editor, but editor, is a huge nerd and he sort of understood the implications. And then my editor-in-chief has actually like written a book about the history of Dungeons and Dragons. So when I told him what was going on, he was very aware of the implications, and he was like, you have our permission to do whatever you need and like do whatever you want to like get the story ready to go by tomorrow morning. And I was like, cool. So, and I've told the story elsewhere, but like over the course of the next 8 hours, I reread the report, or reread the OGL. I wrote the report. I submitted it to editing. I submitted it to our audience development team to get it SEO juiced up. I talked with our art department to get that really cool dragon art, which I think awesome. Was, I'm gonna say it, like I think that was really key in making this sort of like a very eye-catching, like we want to read this. It wasn't just another like D&D screenshot, which I felt was important.
Yeah.
And yeah, so all that happened within 6 to 8 hours.
Wow. It's crazy that like I can't imagine there are many news outlets in the country where an editor would understand what the hell is going on.
No, I think that like maybe Polygon, because obviously like Charlie as the senior editor for tabletop at Polygon he'd get it, but I think there are not a lot of other places would totally, maybe there's no one quite at that audience level really anywhere else that I would assume, that I like know off the top of my head, like, yes, if this story had gone to this outlet or this reporter, it would have been fine. It would have been like, it would also have gone out the same way. I think that there's a lot of reporters out there, like individual tabletop reporters, that could have handled this story, but I don't know if there's a lot of editor-in-chiefs that would have been able to direct the story quite the same way.
Yeah. Matt, insert the newsroom theme here, because I think that this really I think this really like indicates, and sorry to be a nerd about it, but like the real importance of actual journalism and journalistic integrity and all like the processes, the vetting and the resources, and because we had been hearing rumors about this for months, right? Like, on the hobbyist side, people have been like whispering this to us and other people. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know, man, that sounds fucking stupid. And I was like, no way that Wizards would ever do something this fucking insane. And I think like a lot of third-party creators were trying to like get the news out because it was really going to cause major problems, but nobody took it seriously until it was reported legitimately in an actual like news outlet. And I genuinely think that's very cool, and I'm really glad that it happened this way, because if it had landed, like you said, without reporting, if it had just dropped, we'd all be like scrambling to make sense of it, and I don't think the response would have been as unified and as cogent.
Right. I think that's kind of the big takeaway from this, is that we were the tabletop community was able to respond to something rather than react to something. Which I think is like, there's, you could argue semantics either way, but I think there's like a slight difference in between like finding something out before it happens and like responding to that threat rather than like engaging with a threat that's like right in front of you, So yeah, I think truthfully there's any number of reporters that could have handled this sort of situation, but I don't think that there's a lot of publications or editors that would have known how to handle it. I also spoke to my lawyer, not my personal lawyer, the GO media lawyer,
Sure.
in those like 6 to 8 hours, and I was like, here's what I think is happening. Tell me if I'm wrong. Here's all the like text, and she was a rock star and got like clarified stuff for me really fast.
Shout out to lawyers. And also, okay, so one question I had reading through the whole story is when Wizards finally responded, and we can talk about how long they took to respond. They referred to the OGL, that they released as a draft, right? And that's I guess their official line. But it really seemed to me like this. At least from the outside, this wasn't a draft, and had it not been leaked, it would have been rolled out before any stink could have been raised.
Legally, it was never released, so legally, I have to call it a draft.
Yeah.
However, it was a draft that was attached to contracts that people signed. It was a draft that they showed other companies, specifically Kickstarter, and negotiated with Kickstarter using that draft. And there are other points of indication, both within my reporting and elsewhere, that they were ready to press go on this. So while I understand everyone pushing back on like, it's not a draft, like you're totally right. It's not a draft in the sense like they were still workshopping it, because they weren't. I can't say that it wasn't a draft because like they didn't release it. So in the most like technical sense,
we're not trying to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
I understand that there are limitations on what you can say, but yeah.
So
rules as written, it was a draft. Rules
right.
as intended,
rules as written, it was a draft. That's a great way to put it.
Yes.
But yeah, it was basically a press go document.
Okay.
I was sorry. I was just thinking about what you said about, there are other journalists who could have handled this, but not very many outlets. And part of that's what's so interesting to me about the whole saga. And one of the things I think that Hasbro misunderstands about D&D, but the tabletop role-playing space is small, right? Like the whole market is $200 million. It's not a whole lot, right? And a big part of all of this is that reportedly Hasbro wants to make, D&D a $1 billion brand, right? And so that means expanding it. And because it's so small, there's not as many people reporting on it, right? But the cultural, I guess, impact, right? The downstream effects of tabletop role-playing games with Dungeons and Dragons are disproportionate, right? It's a little bit like, no, I can't do the Velvet Underground thing again. It's just, a lot of people who have played D&D or like D&D go on to create things, right? They go on to be showrunners or make video games or whatever. And so lots of people, even though, money-wise, it's not huge, it has a disproportionate number of, I guess, fans, people who are familiar with it. And I guess like the thing that I'm glad about is that you were there to report on it and that there is somebody covering it. But I it sort of highlights an issue in the way that our media works, right? Whether or not there's enough money around something to justify a full-time reporter or a full-time outlet doesn't necessarily reflect how important it is to, society or to the news.
Yeah, and it's like it's to the detriment of culture at large that that's the case. Especially when it comes to gaming, not just tabletop gaming, but like video gaming, board gaming. It's an industry that is like very influential, very political, very fraught, very exciting. And I mean, we just sort of have to look at the fact that like over the past 6 months, like G4 shut down, Fanbyte shut down,
Rip.
Washington Post closed launcher. Like there's so many instances where the cultural impact of games is being dismissed by legacy outlets, and by outlets that can afford to bring on talented, hardworking reporters and editors that can break stories like this. It sucks. It sucks. It's one of those things where it's just like gaming journalism deserves a lot more credit than it gets, and gaming journalists deserve a lot more credit than they get. And I know that like my colleagues at Kotaku get like tons and tons of shit thrown at them, and I'm like, they're Jesus, good reporters. This is good journalism. Y'all are just mad.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like the Kotaku, it's basically like a meme, right? There are people tweeting at Kotaku now about how much they suck who don't even remember why they're supposed to not like Kotaku because they were children when Gamergate happened, but it's just like become such an article of faith that these various gaming outlets suck, and it's very depressing to see. It's very grim stuff.
And it sucks because like that's the thing that like legacy outlets don't respect gaming journalism. Gaming outlets don't get respect. That means gaming journalists don't get a lot of respect, which means like they're not going to get hired at legacy outlets. So it's just like this really self-fulfilling prophecy when I'm just like, gaming is it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And we're not covering it. It makes more money than books. It makes more money than like a lot of things. And we cover like people are talking about like art all the time and ballet. And I'm just like, okay, great. Do you cover video games though? Because if you cover ballet and you don't cover video games, I have very little respect for your outlet if you're covering arts and culture.
To be clear, they should continue to cover ballet and theater and
yes.
and chess
100%.
championships. But you're 100% correct that if they're going to bother to cover those things, if they have a dedicated ballet reporter or dance reporter, which many do, and they should.
They
should have at least one gaming journalist on staff. It's insane that they don't. Yeah.
I'm absolutely not trying to incite competition. I think that like dance and movement art is like one of those things that's like highly undervalued just like in general. My point is very much like if you think that ballet is culture and you also think that games are not culture, like you are the fucking problem.
No, I agree with you. I get what you're saying. I agree entirely.
Yes.
However, what needs to happen is all the rich gamers need to give endowments to newspapers for permanent staff positions, which is what they've done for ballet and all those legacy art things.
Yeah.
Listen to me, rich gamers. I know you all listen to my podcast. Why are you not spending your money on, Carnegie shit? Don't buy houses full of M&M dispensers. Spend that money on libraries and museums and things. Sorry.
Stop buying NFTs. Start creating endowments for game journalists. Like,
That's
it's
exactly
so simple.
right.
I mean, the big problem is that, like, doing so, they know that, like, game journalists are going to be critics. And no one wants their shit critiqued. And no one wants their favorite thing torn down by a critic. And I'm like, valid, but also, like, that's the kind of price you pay for, like, being taken seriously as an art form.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, like, I think that, like, art comes in all shapes and sizes. And, like, games are art and songs are art and dance is art. And, like, there's so much art out there. And it's just, like, man, good art critics are so necessary to, like, the ecosystem of, like, at this point in time, creating, generating, disseminating, analyzing art.
Mm-hmm.
I
am in strong agreement. I also think we're at a, like, absolute rock bottom low point in terms of like media literacy. So good cultural art criticism is more important than ever. Some people are going to get mad at me about this, but I'm right, and you're not allowed to disagree. But yeah, it's I guess to bring it back, I am like very encouraged by what happened the last month, though, because I think it demonstrated the value of good journalism and, you know, responsible media outlets. And I have always been a fan of IO9 and Gizmodo. I've been a reader for a decade, and I'm just like really happy to see that this played out the way that it did. Whether or not it is going to make a difference in the overall negative trend in, you know, gaming or journalism in general, who knows, but it's good to see.
I'm certainly grateful.
Speaking of that critique, as the time moved forward from your breaking journalism isms, you also like put out, I think one of the best things written in the wake of this. You wrote an op-ed just a couple of days ago, or maybe it was a week ago. What is time? Where you talked about Wizards and their response. And is it okay if I just quote a piece of what you said? Is,
oh, sure.
You know, so talking about all the outrage and the backlash to this, you know, very abusive OGL, you said, then there was silence. Over the course of 8 days, confusion and upset turned to anger and frustration. There is no greater unifying power than a common enemy, and Wizards of the Coast allowed the worst fears of fans and creators to go unanswered by staying quiet. You know, just being so connected. I mean, what do you think was like really going on that just like caused this just, you know, not only did they fuck up the OGL, they just fucked up the response in basically every way until maybe just a few days ago.
I think that it just comes from the fact that they did not prepare for this. Like that, the OGL 1.1 was leaked, right? You don't plan for a leak. They're certainly going to now, but they did not plan for a leak. They did not plan for a report. They did not plan for the kind of massive interest that it would garner. They didn't plan for D&D be gone. It is as simple as they just had no idea it was coming. They're Wizards of the Coast is a multi-billion-dollar company. Maybe I think they're sitting at like $2 billion or something. That's even like outside of Hasbro. And the fact is that they just like didn't think this would happen. They thought they would be able to pass the OGL. They thought no one would like raise a fuss, and those who did would like be easily like, you know, controlled. Like the crowd control would be able to happen. And they just didn't expect it. And it was like 8 days of them being like, holy shit. And also 8 days of them being like, well, what do we do now? Because 1.1 was the plan. 1.1 was the plan.
Right.
And they couldn't do it after I published my report. They couldn't do it because it was clear that, like, they would have, like, you know, like, I don't think they realized, like, as time went on, how much of their trust would decline. And how fast it would go. So yeah, I think that it's just the fact that they were scrambling. Internally, they had no idea what to do. They had no idea what to make of it. They could have never foreseen the response that happened online. I think it was pure just like, who's in charge of this? And everyone's pointed at someone else.
What's shocking to me, again, working in the space, is like, this is bad in a lot of ways, but like at its core, it was an abysmal PR failure, right? Like they had absolutely no response, no plan, no, like at every stage up until the last one where they basically capitulated, they said the wrong thing or some variety of the wrong thing. And it's shocking to me. Here's the thing. I don't think that there was necessarily a right way to roll this out, but there was definitely like a bunch of smarter ways that any like competent communications professional could have told them how to do. And I'm like, is there anybody over there? Like, what is happening at Hasbro, at Wizards? Did they not consult? Did they not have a marketing firm? Did they not have a PR firm? This is the thing that blows me away, because it was bad from the beginning, but like so many unforced errors happened that like could have made this so much less unpleasant for them, that they just, you know, the set up to take a swing at and just like missed. That's what's blown me away from the very beginning, is just like how poorly they handled it from the very beginning.
My pure 100% assumption is just that it's everyone in a room like saying, what the fuck do we do about this, and no one having a good answer. I don't think it was anyone being like overly malicious. I don't think it was anyone like strategizing. I don't think it was anyone like, I do know like they do have a PR firm. That's like primarily who I talk to. I don't talk to anyone directly at Wizards, and I never have, because it's always through this fucking PR firm. They're lovely people.
I'm sure they're
nice.
Very nice.
But like I've never been able to get like an exclusive comment or interview from Wizards ever.
Wow.
Ever.
Ever?
They usually like ever. Wow. So it's one of those things where I just have no idea. I have no idea what they were thinking. I have no idea what they were doing, but I'm pretty sure that they were just like baffled. That's my impression, is that they were just like all in a room saying, what the fuck do we do?
So one thing that you said, Linda, that really stuck out to me is they had not planned, right? And that's why this was such a big fuck up. The other thing is like people who are on the other side of this, just kind of your third-party creators, your average fans and game masters, we have also not planned, right? There's no real strong organization, and outside a few small companies, like no union or guild or trade association of people work on this. And I sort of just feel like now that Wizards has released the SRD 5.1 and the Creative Commons, all this, like we just kind of got lucky because our side had not planned either. And it was really a roll of the dice. And I guess we won a little bit, but we haven't planned either.
This is why you don't let corporations control things. This is why you own all your shit. Even if it is an open game license. Like, I mean, I'm not fully bought into the orc either, you know? It's still an open license. I think the like Creative Commons is the smartest way to ensure it, to like future proof your work. But I don't know. It's one of those things where it's just like, it proved that you can't trust corporations and you can't trust Wizards of the Coast. And Wizards of the Coast hasn't been 4 neckbeards in a basement since like the 70s. And despite however many like good people, good friends, good designers, like genuine, like emotionally invested folks are working on Dungeons and Dragons at any given time, they are still owned by Wizards of the Coast and are still owned by Hasbro, and you cannot trust them. And that's just the way it is. Like, I'm really sorry. You work for a massive corporation. You have no union. You like, ooh, what recourse does any good individual have within this system? We know that Wizards of the Coast has done like poorly by marginalized folks, and we know that they've done poorly by like small creators. Like, it's not a surprise. It should not be a surprise to anyone that they would try to like coin brain their way into like massive profits.
That's exactly right. And I'm trying not to like, I'm not trying to be too much of a downer about this, because people I think are rightfully feeling good. And I think they should, because for whatever reason, if nothing else, we forced a gigantic corporation to take a massive L. But at the same time, massive. At the same time, they did not have to. Like, Wizards could have just pushed the OGL through. I think that would have been a mistake. I think everything they have done is a mistake, but they're not beholden to us, right? There's nothing, we don't control them. There's no union. There's no law saying they can't do this. There's literally no reason why they could not have just shoved it through. And it might have worked for them, and they could still try to do it. I don't know. And that's the thing that kind of like just makes me feel not like I won about this. Like I'm not feeling particularly victorious at this moment, because regardless, it really like fucked over a bunch of people who rely on the sanctity of the OGL for their livelihoods, who have been planning their futures, limited and extensive, around it continuing to exist. And at the end of the day, like, all of that is just like down the toilet. And I think the outcome could be good, right? Like, again, you've talked about this in your op-ed, and we've talked about it moving on to other systems, owning your own stuff, creating unions, guilds, trade organizations. But this is just like why I'm so cautious about, again, the capitulation. I'm like, what, you know, if I'm Wizards, I'm like, okay, it's not a big deal to give in here to shut everybody up because we're going to get big on our dipshit VTT and, you know, Dungeons and Dragons movies or whatever. I don't believe that.
Right.
I think that they are morons through and through, but I can see why they would make this sorry, I should probably like rein in my language about wizards, but whatever. It's too late. It's too late now. It just, you know, it does not make me feel like, you know, oh, everything's back to normal, right? Like we're all good now.
Mhm.
Everything's fine. You know, we can do what we
Right.
used to do. Definitely like something has been irrevocably like broken, and we have to change the way that we approach this going forward, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think it's, again, like the trust thermocline has been breached. And the trust thermocline is when companies do things that progressively cause their user base or their customers to lose trust in that company. And it's one of those things where they figure like there will always be more users coming in than users dropping off. But then when you breach the trust thermocline is when you do something like irrevocable to your reputation, and you just lose way, way, way more customers. Like it really is like the straw that breaks the camel's back is this like trust thermocline. And they've reached it. They breached it. Everyone's like really aware of what they're capable of. The fact that 1.1 even existed at all is enough for a lot of people to like swear off WotC and Dungeons & Dragons products forever. It's enough for third-party publishers to be like, we're going to move forward with the orc regardless. It's enough for publishers to be like, we're making our own system actually. And it's one of those things where I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I think this could be a good thing.
I mean, even that like we got the win with like the Creative Commons, and we got the win with their like we're not touching the 1.0, and we got the win with like we're not going to fuck with VTTs. The fact is that like, you know, who's to say what they're gonna do next week? Hopefully nothing.
God,
Nothing. They're not gonna do anything.
Linda needs a break.
I
Don't do
need a
anything,
break.
wizards. Come on.
Please, nobody move. It's just one of those things where it's like they cannot be trusted and they shouldn't be trusted. And even if all of this, like, even if they do everything that they say they're going to do, the fact is that there will come a time where they try and start shit again. You know, it's just a matter of time.
I felt like, you know, the sort of loss that Wizards took when they said, okay, here's the entire SRD for D&D 5th edition in the Creative Commons. I'm like, that's huge. Oh, they're saying we're not deauthorizing OGL 1.0A. Amazing, right? They're not fucking with VTTs. Amazing. And I was like, probably an hour later, I was like, you know, they didn't say that one D&D's SRD will be released as an OGL 1.0A or under the Creative Commons. Interesting. And now, you know, because you're right, the trust barrier has been has burst. I'm like, oh yeah, well, what is going to come next? This is these battles will not, or this war will never end over the control of these types of things.
Right. And I think that that's kind of the big point of the op-ed that I like put out is the fact that like companies will always try to get more and more and more from you. And there will come a time where everyone will have to decide if they're willing to keep giving more to companies. And sometimes it's like, you know, whatever. You're willing to give your data, whatever, to like log on to Twitter every day. But there might be a time where it's just like, you know what, this is like, it's too much. I don't want to give Wizards of the Coast the validation or the money or whatever. And it's really up to the individual person to sort of analyze, like, at what point do you exert control over companies as they try to exert control over you? And that's the bigger point of the op-ed that, like, I didn't really dive into, but sort of, like, hope people got out of it. It's just the fact that, like, everyone will have to determine for themselves, like, at what point will you allow companies to control you? Or control certain parts of you? Because, like, we live in a society.
we do live in a society.
We live in a society where we sacrifice parts of ourselves and parts of our privacy and freedom and like ability and like money to get other things. That's just how society works. But like there are points where you can sort of directly see something happening, like with the Dungeons and Dragons thing, where you can like exert more control over the parts of yourself that a company is trying to take away from you.
Yes. And this is sorry, Matt, I'm gonna keep on rolling.
No, go ahead.
This is the thing that I think is so wild about D&D and about Wizards, is that because it's so small and relatively niche, TTRPGs are unfortunately basically synonymous with Dungeons and Dragons, because it's just like far and away the largest market actor, largest market share. And this confuses people, mostly Hasbro, into thinking that people love Dungeons and Dragons specifically. Like the game, the setting, they love Dungeons and Dragons. And this is in my opinion, massive category error that a lot of people make, because there are, in my experience, very few D&D stands. Like there are not people who are so attached to the brand so much as they are to either the style of play or just tabletop gaming. Like they're not making Drist Jordan fan cams or anything. Like it's not, they're not like all about the things that Wizards is offering them. And in fact, the relationship that I have, and I think a lot of gamers, younger and older, have with the D&D brand is one of mild irritation at the best of times. And again, my hope is that this sort of like shakes off a lot of the calcification, people just sort of staying with D&D because they're familiar, and encourages them to try other things, because it has not been. This was the thing that was pointed out in one of Corey the EFF's, the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Yes. By April Kit Walsh.
Yes, the Thirsty Sword Lesbians author. Really great article about how the OGL wasn't a good deal to begin with. Like, it has never been a good deal. It kind of kept everybody in the D&D ecosystem. And this is no criticism. It makes perfect sense to stick with it, because if you actually want to like make a living or have anyone see your stuff, it makes more sense that way because of network effects, etc. But now that we have an opportunity to do something different, I think it's really important that we do, because the status quo kind of sucked anyway.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I would think that the best thing to come out of this situation is that people divest some of their energy away from Dungeons and Dragons specifically, and invest some of that energy into finding and learning other games. I think the biggest barrier to that is not necessarily learning other games, but definitely learning about other games. I think that one of the big issues that the tabletop space has is discovery, and figuring out what other games are out there. And like, if I wanted to do a game about like dungeon delving, what's like a lightweight dungeon delver I can pick up? If I wanted to do a sci-fi game, what are some like great sci-fi games I can pick up? It's just like there's something there that like marketing or PR or whatever, that like discovery is just hard in the tabletop space, which is probably partially due to the fact that like there aren't a lot of tabletop critics out there, and there aren't a lot of outlets covering tabletop games.
Yeah, I also think it's okay. It's not mostly our fault, but game masters like myself, like I've definitely like fucked up before. And like, okay, so let's say I have some new people who want to play Dungeons and Dragons, and I've taught them the game, and print off the rule summaries and their little character sheets, and we sat down, we made characters, we played like a couple months campaign, and we were actually playing Labyrinth Lord, or we were actually playing Pathfinder. And I mentioned that, but like, if you probably asked them a month later what game we had played, they would have said Dungeons and Dragons. And again, you can argue that those two games are Dungeons and Dragons, and that's fair, but like, they don't know the difference in terms of like companies and brands and things like that. And sometimes we game masters contribute to that.
I think it's a big thing that Dungeons and Dragons just has the kind of cultural currency that people understand. Like, if you tell someone, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go play Dungeons and Dragons, they automatically, like, get an idea of sort of, like, what's going on. But if you tell someone, I'm gonna go play a tabletop role-playing game, they might not have, like, that instant connection to, like, what that is. So it's one of those things where, like, D&D has sort of become ubiquitous with tabletop role-playing games because it was, like, the most familiar, because that's what, like, people know about, because that's what's on Stranger Things, etc., etc., etc. And it's kind of led to this monopolized ecosystem where people don't even know what kind of game they're talking about. Where not gamers don't know, but, like, a lot of the larger culture and the larger, more extended population doesn't even really understand what a tabletop game is, because the only concept they have of it is Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, I've told the story before, I think, but, like, I was playing a game here with some friends of mine where we were doing a Victorian steampunk Savage Worlds game, and my wife overheard us playing and me doing a Cockney voice or whatever, and she was like, oh, I didn't realize you could play other things. I didn't realize you didn't have to be, like, a dwarf guy, you know, doing a fantasy adventure. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'd be a lot more interested. And, you know, it was, once I told her about it, she was like, oh, of course that makes perfect sense. But, like, why would you think about that if every single thing you've ever seen has been, here's 6 fantasy dudes doing a fantasy thing in Dungeons and Dragons?
Yep. It really is just sort of the kind of cultural, again, I think cultural currency of Dungeons and Dragons is the fact that it's just so ubiquitous that, like, people don't even know what the game is. They just know what a Dungeons and Dragons looks like. Mm-hmm. Which is super limiting, and it sucks for exactly the same reason that, like, you just described with your wife, where people, like, don't quite understand what the ecosystem is like, what the possibilities are. Again, it's an issue of discovery where people just don't, there's no good way to get people to not pay attention, but just, like, to educate people on, like, the incredible possibilities that exist within the tabletop gaming space.
Mm-hmm. So in this post, I really like your use of this idea of the trust thermocline breach of Wizards of the Coast. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, astute listeners will point out this is not the first time Wizards has breached this trust thermocline. No. Probably like the 7th or 8th time, going all the way back to like early lawsuits in the 1970s and 80s. But, like, now that we're past this, and maybe this is a little too far out of your area of expertise, but I don't think so. Linda, you're a card carrying union member, as am I, as a former member also of a failed unionization drive. But, like, what could? Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Let's go.
I pulled out my union card.
That's great.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. What could this look like, you know, in the broader, like, creator space? What are there some, like, possibilities or models that are out there? Because so many of the creators work for very small companies that, you know, have or could be unionized, but then a lot of people are just completely independent, completely on their own.
Yeah.
What could organizing in the future look like so we could all live a little safer lives? I
mean, I think there's a lot of economists out there that can, like, give you better advice, but for me at least, it's the creation of a freelancers union, and then the unionization of Wizards of the Coast, or the unionization of Dungeons and Dragons first of all, and then Wizards of the Coast if they can do it. I think that would go a really, really long way. I think that if there is a kind of guild that even smaller creators and smaller shops could be a part of, if there was, like, a game design guild or a game production guild where individual shops could sign up and be a part of that guild through membership without having to, like, individually unionize, I think that would be really, really helpful. A trade guild.
So, like, you know, we could say, oh, don't buy a game that doesn't have that union-made logo on it. You know,
this is why one of the few remaining
with
good
union-made logo
creative jobs are in movies because of SAG-AFTRA and other like related like guilds. Yeah, you need. I mean, that model should really just be to the extent that it's possible, translated to every creative industry, because it's one of the few where there's anybody left to fight for you, right? Like where you can have, and it's not perfect, but like a good job, but like, yeah, a guild, like Linda said, something, or like a freelancers union or a combination of both. But it takes organizing, right? It takes, work.
It takes a lot of organizing. It's one of those things where like, I think a trade guild might work under if they went to maybe the Writers Guild, or if they were able to organize under the Writers Guild, because that's what my union is. My union is the Gizmodo Media Group, and we're part of the guild, the Writers Guild of America. So there are ways to do it. It's really, really, really hard, but I think it would be worth it and like a benefit to the ecosystem in general if stuff got unionized faster and better. Like I know Paizo's unionized, which is great, a great start. And I feel like if more companies follow suit, it would be incredible. I'm sure that if you contact members and representatives of the Paizo union, they will be happy to direct you to resources if you are listening to this and you're a game designer at a small game. Fun fact, shops of any size can unionize. You just need 30% to say that you want a union, and then you will have a union vote. So just tuck that little nugget of knowledge in your back pocket.
Always reach out to the EWOC, Emergency Workers Organizing Committee. I think that's what that stands for. A useful group of people whose only job is to walk you through the unionization process if you need it.
And I also don't know enough about the specific laws or details, but Paizo's organized under the CWA, the Communication Workers of America. Perhaps that would work for other companies, probably would. Maybe it could be something that even like includes freelancers in the umbrella. A big problem here, not to get into labor politics, is most unionization in America are older unions, designed around specific types of industries, and they are more than happy and willing to bring in, newer models and younger people and things like that. But there is a technical like disconnect sometimes that makes it slower and a little bit more difficult than it ought to be. But I think we have seen how important it is to work through that. And
I think so. To sort of go back to your question, I think that unionization is a really great way to future-proof the industry against future monopolies trying to coin brain the hell out of the ecosystem. I think that it's just all a matter of like spreading interest over multiple companies. I think it's a matter of, again, going back to like owning your shit, not using licenses like the OGL or the ORC, and like relying on licenses like the Creative Commons until you can like fully rely on something like the ORC and the sort of ambition of, here, we're gonna like put this in a foundation. I mean, the thing is like Azora Law and Brian Lewis, who are working on the ORC, also worked on the OGL, and the OGL has problems. Like it's one of those things. It's like the circle is complete. They're just gonna do it again, and maybe they'll do it better. Maybe they'll do it different. Maybe they'll like do X, Y, and Z. But who knows? I think that like relying too much on any single license company, division, what have you, is not a good way to future-proof an industry.
I agree.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, Linda, let's end on a high note, since we're talking about this. What, if any, other games, other systems are you interested in? Have you played? Are you particularly excited about? We are always, even from the very beginning, even though we are still have always been sort of like a D&D focused podcast, we love to talk about other systems and other games. So the more we could talk about, the better. But anything that you've been particularly interested in, excited about? Anything cool you want to tell the listeners about?
There's literally dozens of games that I'm excited about.
It's a big question,
now
I know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with the games that I'm like currently playing, like the campaigns I'm involved in. I'm playing an Orbital Blues campaign right now. Ooh. Orbital Blues is sort of like a retro future space cowboy vibe.
I love it.
It's very, very fun. I'm playing a ship captain named Vasco. She's great. What else? I have a couple games on my desk right now. I have Monster Care Squad by Sandy Pug Games.
Big fan of
Orbital
Sandy
Blues
Pug Games.
by...
And
yes.
I have not played Monster Care Squad yet, but it looks awesome.
It looks awesome. I think it does a good job of incentivizing non-combative gameplay. I think so. Orbital Blues is by Jelly Muppet Games. Just so you know, I have. What other games am I like really interested in? You know, Zine Month is coming up, and there's always like a million games that I want to try. Tim Hutchins has the Apollo 47 game that's just like idle radio chatter is so much fun and so good and like so incredibly easy to understand and learn and play. I will advocate until my dying breath for any game that's powered by the apocalypse. Far and away my favorite system. I really love how the narrative is the narrative is put in focus rather than combat, and I really appreciate how every single role has impact, because there's oftentimes in OSR games where if you just fail a roll, and nothing matters. Or you can like do the next action. And in Powered by the Apocalypse, you just can't do it. Oh, I've been listening to Interstitial, Our Hearts Intertwined, which is a PBTA podcast, and the game is called Interstitial, Our Hearts Intertwined. And the podcast is GM'd by the writer. The podcast GM is the same as the game designer. And it's a Kingdom Hearts based game.
Oh yeah.
So the whole idea of this game is that you are going to different IPs and worlds and like fucking with them. So like the first season of the podcast had 4 characters. Marsh from Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced. Roxanne from the Goofy movie, but specifically Roxanne from the meme Damn Bitch You Live Like This.
Live like this.
And then
I'm already on board.
The first season, it was just so I like cried at the end of it. And then there's also an original character named Edith who's from the Rescue Rangers world, and she's a part of the Cult of Gadget. She has like a little gadget keychain.
Oh, I love where this is going. Amazing.
And the last character, and again, they were like, we have to do Disney properties at least for the first season, and we can like branch out in later seasons and then just go to like wherever the fuck we want, because they were like really sticking to like Kingdom Hearts. The last character is Chris Angel. Because his show aired on a Disney-owned network.
Got it.
Chris Angel is technically a dark Disney prince.
I was going to say, like, is he a Disney prince, technically? Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so that's the first season, and it is incredible. They go to Sonic World, they go to, like, Power Rangers World, they go to High School Musical World. Like, it's just, like, everything about this podcast is good.
That's a great pitch.
Very good.
Hilarious.
So Interstitial, Our Hearts Intertwined is a Powered by the Apocalypse thing. I really love everything that World Champ Game Company does and that Will Jobst does in, I think it's like, they have they have their own company. It's like Lucky Gaming. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But Will Jobs' gaming company, I really appreciate. It's them and I think 2 other people that are in charge of it. But I'm friendly with Will, which is why I remember their name. Yeah, there's a lot of people. Oh, Jian Shim. Anything that Jian does is just absolutely stunning. She's a innovative designer that focuses on emotions and nature and like sort of like tactical interactions using like complex emotions, and her work is really incredible. I really like Arc by Momatos. Arc is a game where you are trying to stop the apocalypse, but you use the actual like apocalypse clock as a timekeeper.
Oh, hell yeah.
You know?
90 seconds to midnight kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's like 90 seconds to midnight, and that's like that's a determination in your game. Going back to Powered by the Apocalypse is Apocalypse Keys by Ray Najati. That's also a great one. I'm really excited for like the final product. I got like a play test, and I think I got like an early version of that. But that one looks incredible. There's just so many great games out there that I want to play, but right now I'm in an Orbital Blues campaign. I'm in a Wanderhome campaign, which is J-Dragon, Possum Creek Games. Sort of like Redwall-esque, but without war. A post-wartime Redwall.
We are truly in the golden age of TTRPG.
Yes.
There's so many, and they're so good. And I could, like, if you just sit me in front of, like, any random person, I'd be like, tell me what genre you like, tell me what kind of stories you like, and I would be able to give you, like, 10 to 20 recommendations in minutes. And then, like, of course, like, Blades in the Dark, you know, Court of Blades by a couple of Drakes. Like, that's an amazing game. It's, like, heist-y, manor punk, Victorian era, like, scoundrels. It's just, like, everything about it is just so brilliant. There's so many good games out there. There's so many good games. Anyway, I could go on for hours at length at, like, the amazing amount of, like, tabletop games out there and, like, the great games that are being made. And the hacks that are being made based on these games, like, every Mothership hack and every Mothership module that I have ever seen is just, like, stunning. Each one better than the last. And they're all incredible. And I'm just like, where do you guys come up with this? It's wonderful. Yeah, it's just, like, there's just so many good games out there. And I'm sorry for going on this, like, really, really long rant about it.
We
just
did
love
ask,
games.
so don't apologize. We're very.
I just love games.
Yeah, no, we want to hear about this.
I just love games. Also the like, there's like a 2-shot of Interstitial that I'm currently listening to. That is Homura from Madoka, like, Magical Girl.
Okay, got it. Okay,
Just like a magical girl with guns and time powers, and then also Shigo.
Hell yeah.
It's so good. There's nothing wrong with Interstitial. It is a good game.
sounds amazing.
So I think I mean, fingers crossed, we have made it to the other side of at least this round of the OGL controversy. And I think this is a great note to end it on, which is there are a million cool games that have come out in the last few years or coming out right now. Like, you know, please go try them. And Linda, like, thank you for your amazing reporting. Before this episode, I was, you know, I quantum leaped myself into another universe where this, like, leak and your reporting didn't happen. And, you know, it would be a darker timeline, I think. So thank you for your amazing labor and work and writing and energy. We all appreciate it. Especially the Pulitzer Prize Committee of Columbia
Oh,
University.
thank you. Yeah. I'm happy to accept the
too.
Pulitzer Prize for Dragon Slaying. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you,
You
Pulitzer
deserve
Committee.
it.
I'm pretty sure that the Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting goes to people who, like, uncover government conspiracies, but okay. Yeah. I think the last thing is that, like, if you ever want a random game recommendation, you can just @ me on Twitter and be like, I want a weird liminal haunted West game on a train, and I'll be like, you want great, what is it? There's the Great Train Robbery, the Great Hell Train. I wrote for this game and I can't remember the name of it. The Great Hell Train Robbery?
It's a good problem to have.
I wrote for this game, and I should remember what it is. But like, it's a great game. It's you basically have to travel from train car to train car to avoid the devil, and like until like you get to hell and you find a way out.
If you remember,
the Great Soul Train Robbery.
Sounds incredible. We'll cut it
again,
so it sounds like you didn't forget.
Thank you. And again, like if you ever want a game recommendation, I am very online, and you can just @ me on Twitter, and I'll send you a couple.
Link to your Twitter in the show notes, and thank you again for coming on the show and idly chatting with us about all of the cool stuff.
Yeah, you're always
Thanks
welcome.
for having me.
Thanks for coming. Hopefully next time we talk, it will be under better circumstances. We'll have you on to talk about something fun next time. More fun.
Oh, this is fun.
Yeah, something lighthearted.
Okay, lighthearted. That's a different thing entirely.
Yes.
I can almost guarantee you that won't happen.
Well, I'm still gonna.
But thank you for the offer.
I'm still gonna put that energy out in the universe and hope for the best. Thanks again, Linda. Thanks everybody for listening. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep rolling them dice.
Says here that the unions will never learn. It says here that the economy's on the upturn. And it says here we should be proud that we are free. And our free press reflects our democracy. Those braying voices on the right of the house are echoed down the street of shame, where politics mix with bingo and tips in a money and numbers game, where they offer you a future on stockings and suspenders mixed with all the stiffer penalties for sex offenders.